I'm seeing head shaking, so no changes to those. So I will accept those meeting minutes as drafted. And moving on to our agenda items, we have one item tonight, the strategy and finance goals and prioritization of affordable housing plan. Oh, are you sharing a different screen, Abby, then?
Yes, I was gonna try to pull up this timeline and I realized I might need to email it to myself to get it over here. Um, actually, I can just, let me zoom in here and then I'll show it. My apologies. Recording in progress. Okay. So at our last meeting, Ben had asked where we stand with the timeline, and we're doing pretty well. I wanted to pull it up and give everybody an update and then also made some minor changes. Here. Okay. Can you all see that okay?
Can you zoom in on that, please?
Yes. Okay, so this is the timeline that was drafted in May. And the items that are in green are dates that have passed and things that we have completed. So we passed the resolution extending the TID, we organized the subcommittees, held meetings, did research, writing, and have a preliminary draft. The changes that are in blue are what our staff is proposing after this meeting tonight. So between October 15th and November 11th, we would work internally to merge the documents from this subcommittee as well as the housing and education one into a draft affordable housing plan. So that would entail not only compiling all the work that's been done, but also some reformatting to make everything make sense, possibly adding some graphics, some definitions, other things that can help educate the council once we're ready to take it there. And then in November, we would still have refined the draft and we would have the subcommittees each review the draft at their normal meeting dates. And provide any feedback that they want incorporated into what would be a final draft that would be brought to a meeting. We are proposing on December 13th for a joint CDA and Workforce Housing Committee meeting. We also have a joint meeting coming up on October 20th, Monday, just as a reminder. But December 13th would be when the two committees would meet jointly, review the document together and prepare for a January presentation to the city council. So the items in blue are just some additional changes and more details about how we're gonna get from where we are now, which is preliminary draft, to January, where we would make the presentation to the council. Any concerns or changes to the timeline?
No, I think we're on track, and I think the next steps sound good to me.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to stop share this document and then I will pull up the Word document. Here, Google Doc.
And I see now that Quinn has joined, so welcome.
Hello, thank you.
We are 5 strong.
So this is the document that was included in your packet. It's revised from the last meeting. And I can just live make any changes or edits that you all come up with tonight. Lisa, was there anything else that you wanted to say, or did you want to walk through this?
I was just going to mention that I met with Abby and Daphne and Scott yesterday. I think it was yesterday. I had watched the video of our meeting. I'm sorry I missed the last one. And I'm really thrilled that you all managed to get through the rest of the document and categorize things. Two suggestions I had. One I mentioned to the staff yesterday, and that was that under the more pathways to homeownership part, there was an action related to education. And that struck me as not something that should have been moved to the category or priority to provide housing resources and protections for the most vulnerable populations, because it was about, you know, first time home buying, that type of education. That I'm reluctant to say it should be reinstated, although I think it could be. That might be an activity that we ask the county to, or we rely on the county to do. So just something to think about. It's back here now, just because I mentioned to Abby and company yesterday that the idea was to focus this education piece strictly on the home buying. And then the second.
Sorry, just on that one, Lisa, I'm also wondering if we miscolored that one last time. Because I think we said like credit scoring coaching was not a core part of our remit. So I thought we actually moved it more to like the recommendation category than moved it among priorities. So it might, if I remember that incorrectly.
You're talking about to the other committee, right? Or subcommittee?
To the subcommittee, I think we just said like, again, like, you know, when we talk about the parties being the use of how we're going to use the fund and whatnot, credit score coaching, financial literacy classes was not necessarily a core component of what the fund was for. Right?
Well, Ben, you make a good point, because this could be, I mean, it could be something we drop entirely. It could be something we put in the other recommendations for another entity like the county, or it could be folded into the education and outreach piece. Maybe still is something that we would want the county to take the lead on.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Abby,
we had moved it into the other recommendations. We had not yet assigned like who would be responsible for those recommendations. So noting that the
Okay.
county might be that option would be good. We also noted, or maybe we didn't say this explicitly, but right in the combining with the education team, we might be seeing some similar approaches to see what they have come up with. So
Yep, that makes sense. And then one that I didn't notice yesterday, when I met with staff, is this item number 1, reestablish a revolving loan fund for down payment assistance. The use of land value for a down payment, that I think of as a separate thing, because there is this Founder's Point development in Sheboygan Falls where that was built into the development, that, you know, to keep the homes affordable, they would allow home buyers to use the, you know, $50,000-$60,000 value of the land as their down payment for the house. So I think it's different than, I mean, it could be paired with a revolving loan fund, but it was a separate thing. So I don't recall how we had this separated originally. But just, I mean, it's just a clarification.
I wonder if we intended it to be down payment assistance then with subtypes of programs, right? Establish down
Oh, yeah.
payment assistance programs, which may include revolving loan
Revolving.
fund, land value,
That makes
as
sense.
target populations. I think that was the intent. So not look like
Establish a
honing
down
us in
payment.
on one type, but yeah.
that
And
work?
I would say and or allowing, because they could be combined, they could be separate things. And I liked that you all kept the emphasis on first generation home buyers as opposed to first time home buyers, because I think we talked about, and Jen, I think you brought it up, that a lot of first time home buyers actually have intergenerational wealth that they can tap to help them with their homes, whereas first generation home buyers do not typically. And it was also noted that we would have be partnering with a bank or credit union for that. And so they would be the ones to have to figure out what the requirements are and how to document that the applicant has met the requirements. And I want to thank the staff for agreeing, for taking on the task of merging these two documents. I had said yesterday, that was one of the questions I was going to ask them. How do they envision us doing this? And fortunately, they expressed interest in doing it because they currently have the bandwidth. So I really appreciate that they're taking that on, because I think our subcommittees could do it, but it would be a months long process instead of a weeks long process.
Great.
So did we have this step tonight to prioritize within the list? Was that what we were doing?
I think prioritization is
Yeah.
the main goal this evening.
Is it helpful to prioritize before they're combined, or?
I would say yes,
Okay.
right? I mean, that's, to me, that's more of our finished draft, right? If once we've prioritized it, that's just my thought.
All right, so then in looking to prioritize, do we recommend going through each heading and prioritizing within? Or do we want to, I don't know that we have our headings in a particular ranked order.
Can I ask more big question? What's our rationale for, what's our prioritization basis?
Hmm.
Is it impact on those bullets there?
Scott, do you want to describe what we talked about yesterday?
So one idea for how to kind of narrow in on formatting this document is organizing it more by types of programs. So the way the Sun Prairie Affordable Housing Policy is drafted, they have doing a revolving loan fund for rental housing, revolving loan fund for home ownership, support services for grants to nonprofits to do good housing work, related work. That would be, then that's a little bit easier choice between different types of programs, and also going forward as we go to implement it. For this plan, it would set kind of parameters of the types of programs that would be created. And then going forward, you just issue the RFPs and create the RFPs as the CDA or whatever entity that's managing the fund would bring forward each year. Out of this list of programs that we've said the fund can be used for, each year we would decide which ones we're going to focus on this year to send out an RFP or hire somebody to take on. So that was an idea to kind of organize it in the Sun Prairie type of way, but yeah.
And if we were to try to rank these, I think the biggest bang for the buck, as objectively as we can estimate that, I think that would be a way to do it. And then there are also things like create and maintain an affordable housing fund. That would seem to be job number one, followed closely by hire someone to work on the plan. So I'm not sure how I guess we could have two lists, this long list where they're organized by priority that lines up with the regional housing strategy. But then also have a list, maybe with a timeline phasing in. So, okay, first phase, April, create this fund, be prepared to hire somebody, or amend the budget right away to make it possible to hire somebody, and maybe pull out that first year of activities that we envision council needing to amend the budget to make sure there's money for.
So it's a little bit more of a roadmap than a priority list, right? What's now, what's next, what's in the future, right?
Yep, and I was describing it, and I've described it to this group before as similar to the city's sustainable city plan, where we pulled actions out of the comprehensive plan and said, okay, here are all the ones related to climate action and, and energy. And here's what we think should be done over the next 3 years. And then the sustainability committee's job was to come up with a 1-year plan, their work plan, to say, and of these activities, here are the ones we're going to take on this first year, and then the second year and the third year. So kind of like that. So it would almost be like packaging the work plan for year 1 with this document, but still keeping that menu of items, maybe ordered in priority within each of the now 4 remaining regional housing strategy categories, if that makes sense.
I mean, I agree with those approaches, so, I don't know if there's other thoughts, or Scott, does that give you enough direction on how to maybe reconfigure this as you work to combine it? Is there
Yeah,
more guidance you need from us?
that gives good guidance. One thing I would like to hear from the committee, I guess, is, um, if, this is a nice, great list of all the different types of things that the affordable. What are maybe the 2 or 3 that seem like in year 1, the ones we really want to get established to get. That'll help provide us a little bit of guidance for hearing you all discuss. That would give us some guidance for how to organize it and prioritize with the first draft of putting all this together.
So Lisa mentioned a couple, right, already, like to establish the fund, which is maybe like, it's just kind of like a base thing that has to happen, right? So maybe you don't even need to, but that's obviously would be year 1 thing, right?
Mhm.
And mentioned the hiring too, right? Which, yeah, I think the
Yeah, 5.
5.1, right? I perhaps might also nominate like if I can find it, the section 2.
Oh, yeah.
And it's section 1.3. Yeah, let's look up.
So the entirety of section 2.
Yeah, 'cause we only had one, we only went sub items there, right? I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, you might not be, yeah, you're right, within that might need to look at what would really be feasible in year 1, but.
And then what was the other one you mentioned, Ben?
Item 3 in section 1, the RFP process. Kind of as a way to kind of get moving, right? Yeah.
So I think, like, before that includes developing those partnerships or exploring partnerships or other funding sources to maximize our funds to the nth degree. So I wonder if that should be, after hiring the staff, if that research and exploration should be done prior to an RFP, because that could expand then the dollar amounts we're working with.
Which item are you on, Jen?
Sorry, that one where like whether it's supplement the funding, those
Oh.
are all, the subs are all like suggestions for that. There could be additional things that do that. But is there ways for the staff person to identify supplemental funding prior to issuing the RFP?
Yes, Jen, my thought is that makes a lot of sense. I guess I'd look towards more, let's not wait too long before we put the money to use.
Yeah.
Let's do that in parallel, right? Kind of
Okay.
let's get more, but start doing good with it too at the same time, right? Would just be my thought.
Right, so I think then we're getting into this roadmap territory where we're thinking like those are concurrent activities.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
The other item we could discuss would be item, I guess it's under number 1, item number 5, maintaining the list of developments, just so that we didn't lose track of something that might fall off the affordability list.
Oh, yes. Yeah, and I have a draft of that. It's not 100% complete, but I would say it's 80%. I showed it with Alder Haniro yesterday. I think the earliest expiration dates right now that we have coming up are 2037.
Oh, so not a critical issue.
At least as far as I've gotten in putting all the information together. Yes.
So
Can I ask about the RFP process? So would we be relying on these nonprofit developers to either have land or acquire land? Or when these developments happen, is it typically something that, the city's got the land and we want somebody to develop it?
So we've done it both ways. Couple of examples. We've purchased land along Parmenter Street. And then we did an RFP process to select a developer. It was not a nonprofit developer and it was not affordable housing, but that's how we got Conservancy Bend, apartments and some townhomes. And then we've also done an RFP process where we had applied for $3 million grant, CDBG disaster recovery grant funding, and it required a competitive process. And so we secured the funding, and then we went out for an RFP to select a developer who would receive the grant as a pass-through. I think we could do it either way, but given how limited the land is in Middleton, it's gonna be hard for us to do an RFP and then have a developer that already has a site ready to go to submit. Because if they did already have a site under control, it would be something we're likely already know about or already working with them on.
Okay. Well, I think as long as item 3 here includes wording to indicate that one option would be for the city to be, for the city to have the land ready for the RFP. As long as there are 2 different ways to approach that, I think it's fine to keep the RFP process as a priority and not put acquire land or properties in our first year of activities. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. One thing on this item 3, I feel like the word nonprofit is going to be very limiting for us because a lot of the LIHTC housing developers are for-profit developers. So like, for example, JT Klein, who has developed almost all of the LIHTC housing that we have in town, he's a for-profit. there aren't gonna be that many.
Yeah, that makes sense to not restrict it then.
Abby, though, don't most of the times, the for-profit developer is gonna partner with a nonprofit?
I think in order to secure tax credits, they have to have some kind of nonprofit partner on board as, I think, more of a service related agency, not necessarily as part of the development team. But I think that they do have to have a partner.
Well, maybe we need to take out nonprofit and change the documented record of affordable housing development to be very specific so that people can't come in and say, well, look, our market rate apartments are affordable. So I don't know if you want to reference LIHTC or something, just to make it clear. We're not just looking for market rate affordable housing.
Probably income restricted would be a good term there.
Yeah, that's what I
Very
would.
good.
And I'm not wedded number 3 being a priority if we think there are better ways to, make progress in year 1.
I'm on the same page as you are, Ben. I think getting developers interested in the process and getting them motivated, I think that's going to be the fastest way. It's just my thoughts.
I would like to suggest taking out one of the items. It's number 5.3. Only because seeking common council approval of the action plan and any future programs, that seems like it belongs in sort of an introductory part to explain what the process is. And then I don't know, Abby, if you guys were able to incorporate these, but 2 things we talked about yesterday were somehow partnering, including colleges and universities among our potential partners. I'm very excited that the new president of Madison College, Dr. Jennifer Byrne, lives right down the street from me. So she's already reached out to get together and talk about how the city can partner with the college. And then also, I mentioned that the income restriction, Madison is considering an income restriction period of 40 years instead of 30 years. So that was something Scott said he would research. Might be something we can work into our policy.
So with the technical colleges, you were specifically talking about some sort of pilot for construction, correct? Or were you thinking about housing for technical college employees similar to the MCPASD program?
Oh, I guess it could go either way. Any kind of partnership could be beneficial to both the college and to Middleton and to students. I was thinking, very ambitiously of how do we combine Habitat for Humanity, Madison College students pursuing their technical, their trade certificates, and our need for affordable housing. How do we, lump that all together? Maybe even recruit some high school students who maybe don't want to pursue a 4-year degree right out of school.
Okay, so maybe I should just keep it more open. Explore partnerships.
Yeah, because if we're looking to engage folks on journeys that are not 4-year degrees, some engage in apprenticeships directly with union employers who are trained on the job. And they aren't necessarily, their coursework is not necessarily with the tech colleges. The training happens within the union shops. And well, and also for non-union,
I'd happily focus on unions, coming from a strong union
Yep.
family.
And well, that's the nice thing is that they do, because they create training, they create the trainings. They may or may not partner with tech colleges, but more often than not, that they have in-house training.
So I just want to make sure I understood the connection. So partnering with those who do training of how does that relate to the use of the fund?
When you're talking about developers, workers, right, Lisa? Or-
Mhm.
yeah.
Right, I'm thinking about, I mean, the obvious example would be partnering with Habitat for Humanity to do some construction and bringing in either technical college students, or I love the idea of, union, people are going through training in connection with the trade unions.
Yep.
So it all kind of makes just a development more feasible, right? By bringing in the resources.
Right. If we can provide that as part of their training grounds, perhaps there's ways to, curb construction costs or, yeah.
And I would add, if it's not too confusing to add it, I would say explore partnerships, plural, with area technical colleges and trade unions for training, blah, blah.
Back on section 2. The only one I wasn't sure because we need to highlight is the last part. It's got fairly specific, right? That we're saying we're going to establish a tenant resource center satellite office, right? I don't know if that's necessarily year one.
I would agree with not highlighting that one for year one.
So is the intent that everything that is highlighted in yellow, we would make progress on in year one?
Be where we look to make progress on, right? We'll be the first group to over prioritize more than we can bite off in a year, right?
I wonder if we need to rephrase item A, because I honestly don't know if the senior center wants or needs their funding increased. So can we soften it a little to, or maybe before we finalize this, check with Tammy Derrickson and the Commission on Aging to make sure that this is something they would even want to be able to do, or that they have a need for it.
Point. And this goes to our discussion last time that we should be, we said we should use EGs, like rather, I mean, is there a, I don't know, is there more agnostic statement for A? Are we you know, at least the ones you might have heard from the recording, one things we said last time, I think Scott suggested this is rather than name partners specifically, we put them in kind of an EG,
Mhm.
right? I don't know if that applies to this one or not. I mean, I guess this one seems fairly targeted, right? To the senior center.
It is, but you know what? Your point is a good one because we could just delete item A and say provide funding to organizations, for example, the senior center and Way Forward Resources
Yeah, there you go.
to add to their case management. Yeah, that I like that better.
Okay. I'll still highlight that in red just so we remember to talk with staff team there. I know there has been recent interest from the Commission on Aging and our Senior Center Director in getting a representative on the Workforce Housing Committee because of all the needs there seems. I'll be sure to reach out on that.
I would like to highlight item 3.1 only because it's a program that we have previously funded and there might be, since we've already worked with them and gone through the process, we might be able to hit the ground running with that. I would base it on Kelly Hilliard's assessment. So maybe check with Kelly and see what she says.
We did talk with Kelly about this document, and one of the things she mentioned was wanting to make sure that the sustainability committee would get a chance to weigh in. And that's not something that we have really currently spelled out in the schedule. So we talk about seeking public input in February, and I'm wondering if that's also the anticipated timeline. If there were other committees that we wanted to circulate this to, would that also happen in February?
Seem to make sense.
And we've also talked to Kelly about the Efficiency Navigator program in particular, and that does strike us as a program that is it's already been created. Maybe some tweaks around the edges for the affordability requirements, but should be pretty easy to tackle in year one if we wanted to.
Do we have anything highlighted in providing more pathways to homeownership?
Not yet.
It seems like there's no low-hanging fruit in this one.
That has been my experience working on housing for the last 18 years in Middleton.
It's just simply aren't, it's just a very true statement across the board, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then in the text of the document, we'll have to explain why, because I think the general perception is we should be focusing on, not our perception, but I think the general perception is we should be focusing on homeownership opportunities because that's what puts, roots in the ground for people, which I disagree with because I know a lot of people who live in apartments who are very engaged in the community. But so I think it'll be important to explain why homeownership actions are not highlighted in the first year.
We could within the first year, we could at least put something in the roadmap about having like initial exploratory meetings with these organizations. So like the Madison Area Community Land Trust, Habitat moving out. If there are others that we're not thinking of, we could at least do outreach.
Okay,
And
yeah, that sounds good.
another. Oh, sorry. I was gonna chime in that another way to phrase number 3 here is, that sounds to me also like a revolving loan fund, so having a revolving loan fund focused on, home ownership, and then revolving loans focused on renters, those would be very different types of programs, but that would be another way to bring some parity to home ownership versus renting is highlighting the desire to set up a program that, to the extent that there are partners willing to do that in that type of program, that we help the system that.
I was going to comment that, our colleagues in the Education and Outreach Subcommittee will also have items that need to be prioritized, like what we're doing. And maybe that relationship building, and trying to engage some partners early on, that could be a year one activity that yields fruit in years 2 and beyond.
I should have brought the document for outreach and education to see if there was already overlap. But I can put this on the end here and highlight it, and we'll figure out a way to include it.
Back on the RFP process one, maybe just perhaps the way to streamline that a little bit. I don't know if the A and B. What do we think about the A and B? I mean, the top statement seems kind of powerful. The A and B are sort of nice to have add-ons, right? I don't know if we need to highlight all the A and B as well. What do people think about that though?
Ben, I would agree that, if we didn't get community gardens, that wouldn't be necessarily a priority in terms of my mind. But getting the RFP process going, getting some more units built would be a priority.
I would agree
know
with
we've-
that, but I would say A should be in there. Just because I'm on the Water Resources Management Commission, and I know reducing stormwater runoff is, of course, a huge deal for Middleton. And it's also, stormwater is something that people who don't want to see development nearby always point to as a concern. So if we want to take out the lower surface temperatures and lower utility costs, I mean, that should happen with green infrastructure, but maybe we don't need to call it out so much.
Great point that the stormwater runoff can helps alleviate an objection.
Abby, do you know what the status is of the project to develop sustainable building guidelines?
Yes, We have a draft document and we've all reviewed it. It's interesting method that they've used to try to create a document for sustainable building guidelines that won't immediately be outdated because of how quickly technology is changing. So the standard that they're using is better than. So it's like a percent better than the building code requirement. And it's a relatively simple document. This was done as part of a statewide, I think, grant that the city was part of with Slipstream, and it's a 3-page document. And they have a list of recommendations for how it should be incorporated into city processes. So things like if a project receives a TIF incentive, it should be required to meet the better than standards. And that would require a change to the city's TIF policies. We have that on the list of things to consider. I know that there is interest from Slipstream in seeing if Middleton would be willing to pilot a requirement for rezoning applications that would need to meet it. That's something we need to talk with our city attorney about. But we do have the document. I think it's far enough along that if we wanted to incorporate it here, we could, and I can send it out to you all. I only have it in hard copy and I scratched notes on it, so that's why I haven't I haven't sent it to you all yet, but we can get it electronically from Kelly and send it over.
I do think that would be worth referencing as something that should apply to any, I mean, the reason it was written in the first place is because these are things that that the city should be doing in its own construction projects, and also something we can share with developers to let them know, here's what we really want to see. And maybe if you want TIF, you have to do these things, but just guidelines for how to build sustainably in Middleton. I think we need to incorporate those into this document. And if we don't, the Sustainability Committee will absolutely ask for that to be the case. So we might as well be proactive and build it in.
Okay, just wanting to do a quick time check. We have about 9 to 8 minutes left in this meeting. Wanting to check with Scott, Abby. Yeah. Is there more that you need from us at this point for next steps in sort of reordering these based on this priority conversation? Knowing that we'll need to continue a priority conversation when we meet together with the other committee, or both, or both full committees, potentially, and after combination with the education subcommittee's work.
I think we have enough that we can kind of work on formatting and merging. One question that I have that we haven't really discussed at all, and maybe it's like a couple steps ahead of where we are right now in the process, but we have an estimate of how much funding we're going to have available. And we haven't really put anything into like, we expect we'll spend 20% of the funds on this and 10% of the funds on this. Or we expect that with this roadmap in year 1, we're expecting that we're going to allocate X percentage of the funds. So is that something that you're thinking won't be included in this document, but that would be decided going forward as we're bringing programs forward? There would be discussions about how much of the funding to allocate to them, or did you want to in any way try to estimate that in this plan?
That is an excellent question. I think at the very least, we should estimate how much of the fund in year one well, we need to come up with a plan for paying for staff. Year one can be solely from the fund, but year two and out, just like Becky Binns is not, I don't think she's 100% funded through their affordable housing fund in Sun Prairie, is she?
No, she's not.
Yeah. So that's something that I know council members will want to know. Okay, if we hire somebody, how are we going to maintain this person on the staff? So that's something. I guess Abby, Scott, do you feel like you would be able to come up with a rough estimate for what these highlighted items would cost? I mean, above the cost of having a staff person who's going to be working on them?
I guess estimate is maybe the right word, just because we can put together proposals for what each, relative priority would be generally, but for example, for like if it was gap financing for rental units, that could scale up or down as much as is needed in any given year. So it's not but yeah, we'd be happy to take a first stab at, based on the conversations we've had over the past couple of meetings. These seem to be the higher priorities. Here's generally other funds that we're seeing, what they're coming in at in terms of funding levels for different types of programs. We could provide some of that background for you all to consider.
That'd be fantastic, because I do like the idea of what you said, kind of laying out the estimate and what we've, but, I was just going, because I have no basis to putting numbers on anything, right? So, so that's a tough part.
And it might be that at this stage, we just kind of have like a sliding bar and we put a point
Right.
at a spot along the bar, but we aren't like getting too specific, like we're going to provide 25,000 to this agency. We wouldn't want to do that because
Right.
that would take council action.
Yeah.
And another way that we could keep it pretty simple and high level and give flexibility is delineating how much goes to revolving loan fund type activities where that's circulating back into the fund, how much is going into land banking where that's more cycles in a different way, but oftentimes if you're buying the land, you're trying to write it down for a lower payment amount, and how much is going into supportive services for nonprofits and staff, types of activities where it's more of a grant style where it goes out the door and it's not revolving back into the fund. I think that could be one way to give some guidance overall of what are we seeing in terms of types of spending. Right.
Thank you.
And in these proposals, you'll reference like Sun Prairie and kind of the ratios they've been using.
Yeah, I can chat with Becky and get a sense of they're coming in at, and also the folks in that. Okay.
Copy and paste is always a very active
Mhm.
strategy. And I also wonder, is this something that we would be more broadly talking about, like you were saying, Scott? And once we get this full-time position in place, something that they would be able to figure out and spend those man hours
Right.
and figure out
Great point.
specific.
And trust their expertise and decision making on kind of deep, right, around that,
I think that's a big piece of the puzzle for us and how we can get real numbers behind things.
Can I ask, what is the thought in terms of the timeline for spending these funds that are going to be created? Is it something that we're going to try to compress and get the money out relatively short period of time, or is it more about establishing the fund and maintaining that fund in perpetuity?
I would say the latter. which is why one of the suggestions that's been moved to a different section is to make this part of make this a policy going forward to always exercise the option of a affordable housing extension for each TID that closes.
Has there been any discussions about other ways to fund the affordable housing fund other than through TID?
That I'm aware of.
Well, we've got, I mean, item 1.11B
Yeah.
lists a whole bunch of ways to supplement that funding. And that's, you know, it's quite a lot of opportunity there. I know the Assembly just passed a bill that would allow for 2 final years of increment for TID closures, but the Senate hasn't met in a while, so it's not clear whether that's even gonna be picked up.
Yeah, and I think that the intent behind these items under B are when we are working on a specific project, we could apply for CDBG, or we could match it with LIHTC or WIDA or other funding sources. But this wouldn't be a way for us to take the fund that we have and grow the fund
Gotcha.
itself, right?
Although the fund would be invested, right? Yeah, so there'd be some interest earned every year.
The reason I'd ask that is I was just trying to, in my mind, try to understand, you know, when we talk about percentages, the percentages are going to go to dollar amounts, and just, you know, how much can we get accomplished, you know, in a certain, you know, in a period of time, a short period of time. How much do we need to keep funds available for later efforts?
The next TID after TID 3 will not be expected to close until 2036. So I would think that if that's our strategy, we should try to have funding available for 10 years.
I think that's a really good point. So maybe that helps us also with our, you know, our percentages and our spending patterns.
It's a nice round number of 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years is good.
Mhm.
And I'll also note that another bill passed by the Assembly would create a new TIF structure for residential developments, specifically workforce housing TIDs. So that might be something that in Rev 2 of this document, depending on how things go in the legislature, you know, that might be something we can add.
Well, and the lessons learned through the next 10 years can inform maybe, not a copy and paste, but a phase 2 for the next round of funds available. All right, wanting to just connect, or just check, Abby, Scott, you have what you need. Any other action items that we need to make sure we know about before we close out here? Maybe review next steps.
So Scott and I are gonna, and Daphne, we have a staff work session scheduled for most of the day on Monday, to try to assign out the different pieces and pull the 2 committees' drafts together, and we will get that to you in time for your November subcommittee meeting.
Wonderful.
Great.
Anything else for the good of the order?
Lisa, what were the two assembly bills you were talking about? Their numbers? Do you know offhand?
Let's see. AB 451 is the Workforce Housing Tax Incremental Districts. And I'm not seeing the one. I'll have to find the extension.
Abby, can you share the current estimate on the fund, or is it too back of the envelope at this one?
It's 10.3 to, Lisa, help me, is it 10.3 to 10.7 million?
I think so, yeah. I know it's 10.3 to, and I think 10.7 is the outside.
Thanks.
In the affordable housing TID extensions is AB 453.
Thank you, Lisa.
Sure.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else for today, I will call this meeting adjourned.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon, Randy.
Yeah.
Art walk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was working art walk and I was running around everywhere. I was like, I want to buy something, but I need to fit in my pocket.
Yeah. Something small.
No fancy
Yeah,
thing.
it's good. That's what I was thinking about it.
Yeah. All right.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you both for stopping down.
Yeah.
You got another one after this, or?
Yep. Got a